and his family were among some of the UK's first evacuees from the Chinese city of Wuhan after it was identified as the source of COVID-19 back in January last year. He now says he wishes he had never got on that repatriation flight.
Yeah, after spending 14 days in quarantine upon arrival, the family have since set up home here. But Matt said he's been robbed of his life in China. When we spoke, when you had arrived, when you just got here, there was, you were relieved to be back. You felt like this was the place you wanted to be, that this is where you were going to be safest. That's changed dramatically, hasn't it? What would the situation be like for you if you were back in Wuhan today?
Well, I think the first thing is that the situation changed for us 2 weeks after we came out of Arrow Park. That was the point where I said, hang on, wait a minute, where's the plan? We're not doing anything here in this country. And it was then the penny dropped. They're not going to do anything. So that was when we actually realised, do you know what, we never should have got on that flight. So I've kind of been saying this all year so far.
When you say we're not going to do anything, do you mean because that was middle of February by the point you were released from quarantine, and there was no sign at that point of any lockdown as there had been in China?
Yeah, there was no sign of anything being done whatsoever. As soon as we'd seen firsthand just how quickly the virus spreads from being in China, and watching the daily infection rates in the news there. So when we came here, and so it's already arrived in England. Why haven't we started doing anything? And that was, from the middle of February through to March. And there was just no talk of lockdown. There was no talk of closing the ports, stopping people coming in and out of the country. So that was the point, when we realised we should have stayed. And of course, in answer to your first question, if we had stayed in Wuhan, it would have been 2 or 3 months of a pretty strict lockdown. But then life returns to normal. They really jumped on this in China quite quickly. Considering this was a totally brand new disease, never heard of, and to have taken the steps they did take in the amount of time that they did is pretty remarkable.
As you say, it was weeks after you got back that we went into a full lockdown, March the 23rd. A couple of months after that, starts to ease, and we've been in a process of sort of trying to put the brakes on and ease up at the same time. But what was the equivalent process? Because it's a tale of two countries and how they've tackled the virus, isn't it? But significantly, Indeed. Matt, one of the differences is not just the way that we've gone about it, it's the type of state that you left to come here. Lots of people say if you live in an authoritarian state like China, they have a lot more power to dictate what you do and enforce it than perhaps a more liberal democracy.
They do. That is very, very true. I think the other thing to bear in mind, though, is that it's not so much the enforcement, but people actually listen to the rules over there far more than they do over here. I mean, you look at all the illegal parties, raves, weddings, funerals, people going to the beach. It's just quite simply that I think the real problem over here is that people are demanding their freedoms without acknowledging their responsibilities.
There's also been a lot of criticism that China were never open enough and transparent enough about the state of this virus. And had they, had they been more open initially, all the governments around the world would have been better prepared, and they kept that secret to themselves for quite a long time for, whatever reason that was as well.
I don't think that they did keep things that secret. I mean, again, it's a brand new virus. It was, normally these things get identified.
Slow. Whether they kept it secret, Matt, they were certainly slow in sharing what they knew and the potential devastation that this virus was clearly having in Wuhan and then in China as a whole.
Well, if that's what you believe, fair enough. I think they jumped on it quite quickly. And they had told they told the British government that there was something serious happening at the start of January. Now, how long things had been going for before that, that I'm not privy to that information, but they certainly had told the British government that there was, there was something serious happening in January. That's why the FCO put out an advisory that, don't go to Wuhan, don't go to China, and then that stark warning, get out. And that was all over the course of a 2-week period. So I think it is unfair to say that they willfully withheld data. No government in the world wants panic. That's what every single government strives to avoid, and whether that's China, America, Australia, or England.
But they don't want embarrassment either, do they? And there is an element of that, whether you believe it or not, that they could have kept some of this back from sharing it globally because, there's an inferred potential embarrassment of the fact that a virus starts somewhere that can then have sort of globally devastating impact. Just aside from that, I wonder, we came out of lockdown in the summer. Was there no opportunity for you and the family to fly back to Wuhan then? I mean, what's the situation? Have you tried to get on a flight before now?
So, there was an opportunity, but again, in China, they do things properly. So where we were all isolated together in, as a family in Arrow Park, in China at that time, it was one person per one room. So if we had gone back then, that would have meant, my mother has Alzheimer's. It would have meant putting her in a room on her own where we're not allowed to see her and explain what's happening. She wouldn't have any of her English movies or TV shows. She wouldn't have the food that she can eat. So it was just completely impracticable at that time. Of course,
well, so you say in China they do things properly, and clearly they did lockdown much more strictly. But there's a sense of compassion that you're suggesting is lacking there.
It's not so much a sense of compassion. It's quite simple. They did, not long after that, they did start allowing families to stay together. Of course, by the time they'd done that, we'd then committed to staying in the UK for quite a bit longer. And so we'd started extending the house. We couldn't just then abandon that. So the opportunity presented itself, but it wasn't adequate at the time. Once the circumstances changed, our circumstances had changed, and so now here we are. And but of course, with every day that passes, the dementia gets worse.
Before we let you go, so right now we're in our third lockdown over here. You feel like you'd be better off in Wuhan today. If you were waking up in Wuhan, what would you be able to do right now that you can't do because we locked down too inconsistently and too late, in your view?
Well, right now in Wuhan, it'd be 8 hours later, so I'd probably just be going out to my favourite restaurant for a bite to eat. But literally, I can go out for a haircut, a much-needed haircut, I must add. And, I can literally go out and do anything as normal. It really has got back to normal. I think the only restrictions at the moment are on the travel around Chinese New Year, which of course is a big deal for them. But apart from that, it's business as usual.
Well, as we've discussed, there are doubts about transparency when it comes to China, and there are plenty of things the Chinese government might have got right in this pandemic, but there's plenty of things you wouldn't want from the Chinese system. It's interesting, there is a statement this morning from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office about your case, Matt, which says the extraordinary efforts of our staff has brought Brits home safely from every corner of the world during an unprecedented global pandemic. Most of the 300 British nationals we flew home from Wuhan on special flights were content with our efforts, which involved sending repatriation teams to the city at the height of the initial outbreak. I mean, I wonder, our government did go to extraordinary efforts to bring you back, which is what you wanted at the time. Do you get the sense that they're a little bit cross, that you might seem ungrateful?
It's not that I'm ungrateful. The actual repatriation itself and the military personnel who assisted us with that were absolutely astounding. Really, the big problem was that originally the government wanted to fly us into London and then have us take public transport home, and it was us, the repatriees, that were actually saying, hang on, we're coming from a city where there's a killer virus, nobody knows who's got it, and you're wanting us to take public transport. And we were the ones actually telling them we want to be quarantined. So it's and again, I've not hidden the fact that I'm not that impressed with the way the administration in this country has dealt with the pandemic either. So I've obviously ruffled a few feathers, but hey ho.
OK. Dr. Hillary wants to come in on this just for a moment, Hills.
Yeah, just two things. Matt's completely right that in Western democracies we crave our freedoms, but that freedom has to come with responsibility. I think that's one thing. But the other thing is, if we've learned anything from this pandemic, is that as soon as you get a new virus identified in the world with pandemic capability, you have to lock down. And actually, looking back, I don't think China should have allowed anybody to leave Wuhan. And be repatriated at a time when we know now that that's how the virus spread to Italy, to Europe, to UK. Maybe not in that cohort of people who came back from Wuhan, but that's certainly how it travelled to the rest of the world. You've got to lock down immediately, and we may well see more pandemics, and that's the lesson I hope that has been learned.
Yeah. Clearly, that's something Matt's agreeing with. Have you got a return date in mind, though, Matt? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you've extended the house and you've settled here a little bit more, but your mother still has dementia, so are you going to be able to travel back eventually?
Well, who knows? With dementia, the clock's always ticking, and it's only ever going to go in one direction. So we just have to wait and see. And if the opportunity presents itself again, yeah, sure, we'll go. If it doesn't, we're equally happy to be here. I've got my little garden and my fish pond to keep me busy. So. We're home's where the rump rests.